Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Now today, I'm going to talk about week 22 matches of the Overwatch League regular season. This is for the Countdown Cup, and quite an interesting stuff actually happened this week. So let's have a look at the results, and here they are. So, first off with the first one, which is obviously from the East, the Seoul Dynasty versus the Chengdu Hunters, and it was the Seoul Dynasty winning that one against the Chengdu Hunters. Pretty convincing win as well. Prof again MVP. Just no surprises there. For the Hunters. The Shanghai Dragons continue to struggle as they got beaten out by the Philadelphia Fusion. Zest gained MVP. Interestingly enough, that they didn't get any percentage on the New Queen Street as the push map, so that was pretty interesting to see. But I mean, I guess the Dragons, if you are a Dragons fan, it got a little bit better for you later on this week, but yeah, not enough. I'll say to really make a Shanghai Dragons fan really happy. So Dragons continues to struggle, probably sandbagging, probably just waiting. I did sort of build the roster. I think it was Void on tank and Baby Bay on support. Not Baby Bay, Bay. Not Baby Bay, he's in Valorant. But Void and Bebe, they're both in their roles. I think this is obviously just so the other players like Fate and Lee Jae Gong, or maybe it's Yaki. I think maybe Lee Jae Gong. I think it's taking a break, so I think it's just it's just for players just re-energize for the playoffs, just so they can feel 100%. It doesn't really matter if they win or lose in these matches because they're automatically locked into the playoffs either way. Because it was so dominant in the previous tournament, so I don't think it really matters for them. Let's move over to the West as the LA Gladiators continues their rise after their horrible Summer Showdown showing. They easily 3-0'd their rival, actually, the London Spitfire. Remember, that was a very, it still is a very good rivalry between the Gladiators and the Spitfire. Obviously, if you remember from season 1, they were, I think they versed each other I think twice. I'm pretty sure, like quite a few times. I was in season 1, and I think it was just a back and forth battle, and especially into the playoffs that time. And the Spitfire obviously won in season 1, but here it doesn't really look like it. But they are still looking pretty good. But it was a 3-0 victory for the Gladiators. So Shu gained MVP. Another 3-0 victory, this time for the Dallas Fuel against the Vancouver Titans, and it was the Dallas Fuel winning that one, a 3-0 victory against the Titans. Sparkle getting MVP. And the Shock continues to really surprise me of how struggling they are, but I guess it doesn't matter because they did have a pretty good pickup during this time, I'm pretty sure. The Defiant winning against the Shock, a 3-1 victory for the Defiant and Hisu getting MVP. And obviously we'll talk about who that player was after we talk about these matches. These matches we're now going into, and it was a reverse sweep for the Shanghai Dragons against the Hangzhou Spark, a 3-2 victory for them. Izuyaki gained MVP. This is definitely a better performance from them. The Spark continues to struggle, and I don't know if those pickups that they had, obviously, if you remember, they picked up, who did they pick up again? So they got Neko, who transitioned from a coach to a player, and oh crap, Teru. There we go. Teru, formerly from the Vancouver Titans, who was a DPS player for them, has now transitioned to a support role. So, not really a good performance from the Hangzhou Spark. Either way, it's still in for the Shanghai Dragons. Next up, the LA Valiant versus the Chengdu Hunters, and it was the LA Valiant who won against the Hunters. Pretty surprising of how well how decent, I should say, actually, the Valiant went this week. A 3-2 victory for them. Becky getting MVP. I think this is also the first time we've actually seen Becky, obviously as an MVP, so kind of makes sense for that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that. And the Hunters, not really there, obviously, but they did get. They also got the last laugh at the very end, which when we have a look at the standings, a very easy 3-0 victory for the Seoul Dynasty against the Chengdu Hunters. No, the Guangzhou Charge. A very easy 3-0 victory for the Dynasty. Smurf gained MVP. What else can I really say about the Circle Royale and Pegaso? I think I say the name. now those are some pretty close matches, but other than that, I mean, I don't know what to say. Just not great for them, we'll say. Now we'll move over to the West region, and it was another 3-0 victory for the Dallas Fuel against the London Spitfire Fearless Game MVP. The Spitfire, to be fair, had a pretty tough schedule this week, so I'm not really surprised they got kind of blasted here. But it is what it is, I guess. 3-1 victory there. A 3-1 victory for the Washington Justice against the NYXL. This is well, I mean, this won't be the last time we also get to see the New York Excelsior this week, or even the Washington Justice. But it was the Justice winning this one. Kalios getting MVP, 3-1 victory for the Justice. And I think this is where we actually saw the new pickup. Or was like the new player play. I'm not too sure. But the SF Shock, the San Francisco Shock, winning against the Atlanta Reign. A very close game, though. A 3-2 victory. It was actually a reverse sweep for the Shock against the Reign. Very close victory. Proper game MVP. What else can I really say about this match? A very, very good match here against the Shock and the Reign. Another good match was this one, the Philadelphia Fusion against the Guangzhou Charge. It was a 3-2 victory for the Guangzhou Charge against the Fusion. So the Charge and the Valiant are still looking for a spot, possibly in the playoffs. They probably still maybe have a chance of making it to the playoffs. I think it really depends on next week's match, which we'll get into later in a bit. But I mean, it's pretty close there in those last two positions. Zernias, he gets MVP. If you don't know who Zernias is, he's basically Evital. Obviously, Evital used to play for was mainly well known for playing for the Chengdu Hunters for a very, very long time, I think until this year. So, he's now switched over to the Guangzhou Charge after playing for, I think it was Team Chaser, if I remember correctly, which was the Chengdu Hunters Academy team. So now he's back in the league, and he got MVP for the team. Next up, a 3-2 victory once again for the LA Valiant against the Hangzhou Spark, and Becky once again gained MVP. Pretty good win for the Valiant. I mean, the Spark, is still struggling, especially with that new pickup. So I'm probably expecting the Spark to be out of, or maybe, well, I should say, not making it to the playoffs. I don't think. That's just my opinion, though. But maybe there's a chance, but I don't think they're going to make it, sadly, if you are a Hangzhou Spark fan. Next up, we have the LA Gladiators against the NYXL. It was a 3-2 victory for the LA Gladiators. I was not expecting the NYXL to make it this close. Kevzo gained MVP. It makes sense that Kevzo should get MVP for that. I mean, Kevzo has been popping off this whole season. Obviously, we'll be having a look at the MVP. Is it MVP status? I can't remember what they call it right now, but it's obviously in the Overwatch League website, which we'll have a look after this. But the Gladiators winning against the NYXL. Pretty close though. One which was not close at all was the Washington Justice against the Atlanta Reign. A 3-0 victory for the Reign against the Justice. Venom getting MVP. One more do I really have to say about this. But I mean, yeah, it was pretty convincing when I was like for the Reign. And this one really surprised me. The battle of the two Canadian teams, the Toronto Defiant against the Vancouver Titans, and the Vancouver Titans won against the Toronto Defiant. I'm surprised once again that the Titans actually won against the Defiant. And it was, it kind of makes sense now because it was obviously based off the bit of a Canadian rivalry there, Toronto versus Vancouver. So I guess I kind of meant a bit more to the Titans, but we've obviously seen how good the Titans actually can be when they show up. King of surprise gain MVP for that. So have a look at the next week's matches, and I think this match is what I'm mainly talking about when it's going to be a pretty close match for the last two spots. The Guangzhou Charge versus the LA Valiant. That's going to be a great match to watch, and obviously everyone's going to be watching that one to see who's going to qualify. A team that we don't, two teams we haven't seen yet is the Houston Outlaws versus Paris Eternal. Obviously, they played in week 21, including with the Boston Uprising and the Florida Mayhem. But yeah, so they're gonna be back for this weekend's week 23. Other ones, maybe Charge or Spark, that might be pretty good. If we keep looking, Reign Dallas, that might be good. Eternal Titans, obviously the Battle of Texas. Outlaws versus Fuel. That's going to be in the esports stadium in Arlington Texas. So that makes sense. Oh, it was Arlington, Dallas, whatever. I don't care. And we actually have another match which will be played offline, which will be at Seoul. So it'll be the Seoul Dynasty versus the Philadelphia Fusion. That'll be at the WDG Esports Studio at Seoul, Korea, which that's also gonna be very exciting. So maybe I'll probably maybe tune in for that one. But I haven't really watched a lot of Overwatch matches lately because I've just been getting bored of it and trying to do other stuff like mainly Valorant, which I'm kind of mainly focusing on. But let's have a look at the standings, and obviously a lot of stuff has changed. The Dallas Fuel is now taking over the lead on the standings from the San Francisco Shock. The LA Gliders aren't too far behind them. There's currently 1 point separating the top three. Then we got the Houston Owls who had locked themselves into the playoffs after I think the Spitfire lost against who they lost against. It was the Dallas Fuel, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I think it was when the Dallas Fuel won against the London Spitfire, the Houston Outlaws locked themselves into the playoffs. So I guess I guess like the Battle of Texas. I mean, it won't really mean much now. I guess mainly just only a win. But I mean, look at that, a Texan team helping out another Texan team. So there it is. The London Spitfire and the Atlanta Reign, both of those teams currently holding 5th and 6th. I think if the Atlanta Reign wins the next 2 matches, I mean, Mayhem maybe, I don't know about the Dallas Fuel though, that might be pretty difficult. If they win their next 2 matches and the Toronto Fire loses their 2 matches, I think they might I think they might get the spot into the playoffs. I might be wrong with that. I'm not too sure. And then we got the Toronto Fire in 7th place. Washington Justice has moved themselves above the Florida Mayhem. And currently the Boston Uprising in 10th place. The 3 teams who will not be making it to the playoffs at all, that being the Vancouver Titans, the New York Excelsior, and the Paris Eternal, who still only has 1 win, which is a bit of a yikes there for that team. For the East End, nothing really much has changed. We got the Seoul Dynasty, the Shanghai Dragons, both of them are in the playoffs either way. Both of them separated by 3 points. The Philadelphia Fusion is pretty far behind them. 2 points separating them and the Spark. The Chengdu Hunters have now locked themselves a bit into the playoffs. I think they might be in the Countdown Cup, which is basically what that lime green means. And then the Guangzhou Charge and the LA Valiant. That's going to be the match that everyone's going to be looking at. So, which is why I did say the Charge and Valiant. That's going to be a good match because 1 point separating them. I think if the Charge wins this match, I think they have a very likely good chance of making it to the playoffs, or even making it to the Countdown Cup, which is, I think that's what that means. The Valiant will be eliminated, and then obviously if the Valiant wins, and the Valiant have a very good, I mean they still will be tied, but look at like the match. I mean the Shanghai Dragons have been struggling a bit, so that might be a good time for them to win. The Charge, they have a lot more easier schedule though this week against the Valiant. Against the Valiant, so we'll see how that goes. So might be going to Charge way, might be going to Valiant's way. Either way, it is esports. It is very unpredictable. Now obviously we've actually gotten some roster changes. This is what I was talking about the San Francisco Shock. Striker has come back to the San Francisco Shock. Now I think this might have helped them a tiny bit, but probably not a lot. They might be sandbagging a bit, so it kind of makes sense, obviously. Striker will be has now came back to the San Francisco Shock, where he won his 2 championships. After originally one of those weirdest ways of Overwatch, for teams with Overwatch League. Striker was with the Boston Uprising, went to San Francisco Shock, went back to the Boston Uprising, and is now back at the San Francisco Shock. Possibly one of the weirdest timelines for a player during the Overwatch League, basically being in 2 teams twice. I don't think that's ever happened before, so that's a very weird, very, very unusual, I guess we'll say, after he left the Uprising midway through the season. He's like coming back, and I think he'll be with the Shock. Definitely with the Shock during the Countdown Cup and to the playoffs. And Itzel he's now fully into the Barcelona Uprising is because he was godly. Probably. I'm not too sure about that one. But mainly because the Uprising Academy has ceased operations. The Uprising Academy will not be a thing anymore, so that's why you see it's all back in the uprising, back in the up which is why you see it's all back in the Boston Uprising full time with not a two-way contract. So pretty unlucky there for, I mean, it sucks obviously because now they got another academy team. So I think like a few teams now has an academy team. So hopefully we get to see more, especially when Overwatch 2 fully comes out, and maybe more players comes into the esports scene for Overwatch. But obviously I can't really predict anything, so have to wait out for that. And just a reminder as well, you can now vote for your 2022 MVP for this year's Overwatch League season. Obviously, the previous winners have been Jonak, Sinatra, Fleta, and Leave. And then we'll have a look at this year's cast of Overwatch League MVP. So we have Proper, Kemser, Hanbin, and Lip for the first row. Then we have Shu, Prophet, Smurf, and Zest. And then we have Hardy and Kai. Now, I think I already did my vote, and I said Hardy because he's a Chad. I don't think Hardy is actually gonna win. If he actually does win, I'll be very surprised about that. I think the most likelihood of who's gonna win is probably gonna be Proper, maybe even Hanbin, even. Other than that, I'm not too sure. Maybe you can put Prophet into that. Maybe you could probably put Kevs, or maybe even Kai. But I think most likely the most likely two players who might win it would be Proper or Hanbin. Those two. If not, then I'm gonna be very surprised about that. If Hardy somehow wins, that's gonna be the biggest meme MVP I've ever seen in my life. But I mean, it will be really funny to see it though. But yeah, that's really about it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Catch you guys on next time in the next one. Goodbye.